He beat his pregnant Doberman in a drunken rage. What happened next will leave you breathless. Afternoons in Rockford Ridge were usually quiet the way only small southern towns could be humid, earthy, and lazy under the Tennessee sun. But at exactly 3:14 p.m., that quiet was torn apart by a scream that didn't belong in this world. It was sharp as a blade.
Whimpers
Rough,
and low
strangled,
growls.
soaked in despair, the kind of sound a normal person hears once in their life and remembers until the day they die. Hannah Collins had just stepped out of the rescue van when my body froze. The blood in my ears turned cold. I didn't need anyone to tell me. 1 second of that sound was enough. I knew it was a dog being tortured so brutally its soul was already halfway out of its body. Then a second sound hit. Thwack, a wooden stick smashing into flesh. Unmistakable. I clenched the van keys and exhaled hard. I didn't run, I launched forward. My team, Jordan Hale and Riley Donovan, saw my movement and followed immediately, no questions asked. In Rockford Ridge, when an animal screams like that, you don't wait for the police. You don't file paperwork. You run, because if you're even 1 minute late, that animal dies. We crossed the rotten lawn of 27 Maple Hollow. The smell hit us before the view did: beer, old cigarettes, and blood. Fresh, metallic, sharp enough to make my stomach clench. I didn't knock, didn't call the owner's name. I pushed open the rusty iron gate. The hinge groaned a long, miserable cry. And the moment I stepped through that gate, I knew I was walking into another memory that would haunt me for years. A memory that wakes you at 2 a.m., drenched in cold sweat. The Doberman was lying there. A collapsed, black and tan shadow on the beer-stained dirt and broken glass. Her belly swollen full term, ready to give birth. But her breath was so faint I could barely see the rise and fall. Blood leaked from her back leg, soaking into the red Tennessee soil until it turned thick and dark. Her ears burned red from cigarette stubs. One eye swollen and purple. Her ribs bruised like she'd been kicked again and again. But that wasn't what made my chest cave in. Not the blood, not the injuries, not even the full, fragile belly of a mother about to give life. It was her eyes. The way she looked at me, wet, hollow, resigned, but still begging, as if saying, if you hadn't come, I wouldn't survive another minute. I had taken only 2 steps when a man's voice slashed through the air from the corner of the yard. I said, "Shut up!" Then the bat slammed into the dirt, thwack inches from her head. A drunk staggered out from behind an old oil drum. His filthy t-shirt clung to his skin, his face, blotchy red eyes, dull like fogged glass. In one hand he gripped a baseball bat stained with dried brown streaks. In the other, an unopened bottle of whiskey. He pointed the bat at me. "Get out. This is my dog." Jordan stepped behind me, voice low. "This is animal cruelty. Drop the bat." The drunk laughed a dry, warped laugh, like metal grinding on metal. "My dog. I'll do whatever I want. She didn't give me the litter I wanted, so she's useless. All she does is whine, whine, whine." He drove his boot into her belly to punctuate the sentence. The dog let out a broken, tiny cry, a sound so shattered it died before it even left her throat. I felt something inside me snap. I stepped forward on a single breath, my voice sharp as a blade drop. The bat. But like every rotten man I've ever faced, he didn't. He lifted it, swung it down, aimed straight at the Doberman again. He never got the chance. Riley and Jordan lunged simultaneously, ripping the bat from his hand and pinning him to the ground. He screamed, cursed, ranted about ownership, about useless dogs, about who gave us the right. He was cuffed in under 3 seconds. I didn't spare him even one look. I knelt beside the Doberman, her blood, her breath, her fading life mixing into something that burned my eyes. I placed my hand on her head. She trembled violently. Then, weakly, she leaned into my palm. I whispered, part vow, part command. "Sweet girl, we're here. No one will touch you again. You're safe now." But I knew, looking into her eyes, that safe was just a word, because her body was shutting down faster with every minute. And inside her, the puppies who had never seen the Tennessee sun were dying with her. Rockford Ridge, Tennessee. One of those towns where everyone knows everyone's business, yet no one says a word. A damp little place tucked between old tobacco fields and red dirt roads that twist like scars passed from one generation to the next. Here, people are used to summer storms, used to the smell of wet earth, and worse, used to turning their backs on things they don't want to see. But I wasn't one of those people. I'd spent 11 years working as a rescuer for the Rockford Ridge Animal Response Unit, a small but stubborn team who took on the cases county animal control always delayed dogs left in 100-degree heat cats locked in trunks. Livestock starved out of neglect and cruelty reports neighbors whispered about but never dared to file. This job didn't pay enough to live on, but it paid in something else: obsession, fury, and sometimes the smallest miracle. I was the one who got the call at 2:47 a.m. 3 days before I found Ember. An elderly woman's voice shaking so hard it felt like a gust of wind could snap the phone line. There's a pregnant Doberman. He beats her every night. I hear her scream, "Please, do something before he kills her." Then she hung up. No name, no number, no details. Just one address and 7 Maple Hollow Road. I passed the information to Jordan Hale, our rescue coordinator. He did exactly what protocol required. Contacted Animal Control, filed a formal report, requested a welfare check, and emailed the county. The responses were always the same. "We'll review when possible. Maybe tomorrow. We're short-staffed. Tomorrow for a dog being beaten. Tomorrow isn't tomorrow. Tomorrow is never." For 3 days of waiting, I didn't sleep. I knew men like Ryan Mercer. Every American town has one: cheap alcohol, quick temper, bitter at life, always looking for something weaker than himself to unload on. If no one intervened, men like him would keep swinging until the thing in front of them stopped moving. By noon, on the 3rd day, Jordan dropped the file onto the table, a sound heavy as a coffin lid. "Hannah," he said, exhaustion bleeding through his voice, "Animal Control isn't coming today. Sheriff's office says they're tied up on another case." I stared at him for a long moment. Then I said one sentence: "If we don't go, that mother dies. And so do the puppies inside her. Let's go." Jordan nodded once, short, decisive. He called Riley Donovan, the youngest vet tech on the team, but with 5 years of ER trauma experience. Riley was always the one I wanted on cases where we didn't know what we were walking into. Jordan also called Deputy Cole Harrison, the only local officer willing to unofficially back us when we had to step into complicated yards. Cole knew this town better than anyone who was violent, who had guns, who snapped when strangers entered their property. And he knew Ryan Mercer. "You sure you want to go out there?" Cole asked. "When he drinks, he swings. Last time he almost smashed the neighbor's kid." "I'm sure," I said. "No one else is going." Cole exhaled, grabbed his patrol keys. "All right, I'll be right behind you. But Hannah, if he lays a hand on anyone in your team, he's going face down on the ground." I didn't argue. In Rockford Ridge, warnings like that aren't threats. They're care. That afternoon, the team gathered at our tiny rescue station, just an old, converted storage shed, holding crates, stretchers, leashes, meds, and sun-bleached equipment. We packed quickly Riley's medical backpack, foldable stretcher, warming blankets, emergency pain meds, body cams for legal evidence, trauma, first aid kit. Jordan pulled up the digital map marking Mercer's house. "No neighbors will speak up," he said. "Everyone on Maple Hollow is scared of him." I shut the van's trunk. "We don't need witnesses, we just need to get that Doberman out." Back then, none of us knew her name. None of us imagined she would be Ember the Doberman mother who would survive something 99% of dogs would never come back from. But the moment we pushed open the rusty gate to Mercer's backyard, everything was already shifting. Not because of the system, not because of the law, but because two people and one dog collided at the exact second that draws a line between life and death. I didn't know that within minutes I'd be on my knees beside Ember Blooddirt, and unbearable pain all around us. But I knew one thing for certain. When the system refuses to act, decent people will. And that afternoon in Rockford Ridge, our small rescue team was about to walk straight into a nightmare no one else dared to face. The dirt road, leading into Maple Hollow, always carried a strange kind of silence. The damp, heavy kind that felt like it was hiding something rotten beneath the air. When my rescue van turned in the tires, rolled over the hardened ruts with a familiar crunch, as if even the road had witnessed too many ugly things to care anymore. I stepped out first. The smell hit me immediately: stale cigarettes, cheap beer, and something metallic and fresh: blood. Jordan followed close behind, his gaze sweeping the area like we were entering a war zone. Riley hugged the medical bag to her chest zipper, already open, ready for whatever level of damage we were about to face. Deputy Cole Harrison climbed out of his patrol car, hand resting lightly on his holster. No weapon reports, but neighbors say he throws bottles. Keep a distance. Let me approach first. I shook my head. The dog is the priority. We moved into Mercer's front yard, an actual dump. Beer cans stacked like mini towers, shattered plastic chairs. Windows patched with warped cardboard, taped on like old, untreated wounds. On the porch, a long metal chain cut clean through lay slack across the step, an unspoken confession of everything we feared. I knocked. Rockford Ridge Animal Response. We're here for an animal welfare check. No response. I knocked harder, still silence. Then, from the backyard, a sound that froze my lungs: clink, clink, the rattle of metal against metal, followed by a tiny whimper, choked, suppressed, like whatever was making it was trying to hide its pain so it wouldn't be beaten again. Cole and I exchanged a look. He nodded. Back entrance. Now. We moved in a line, slow and controlled, like edging into the den of a predator. The side gate wasn't locked. It only needed a light push before the rusted hinge let out a long, aching cry. The moment we stepped into the backyard, I understood why that anonymous caller had sounded on the verge of breaking. Everything here was wrong. A small metal crate, too small for any adult dog, was filled with black fur, dried feces, and streaks of blood clawed into the bars. Patches of dark soil, the kind only rescuers recognize instantly, soil soaked in blood more than once. Shattered bottle glass with dried red smears along its edges. Jordan's voice cracked. He beat her here, over and over. Riley pulled on her gloves, hands trembling. If she's still alive, she's barely hanging on. Then a scream ripped through the backyard. "Shut up," I said. "Shut up." A drunk, thick voice so full of malice it raised every hair on my arms. Cole signaled us to stop, but I couldn't stay still. I cut left, slipping around a rusted oil drum, following the drag marks of clawed paws across the dirt. And when I saw Ember, time dropped out from under my feet. The Doberman, mother, full-term belly, heavy ribs, sunken body, trembling like fire consuming her from inside, pressed herself into the narrow gap behind a broken pallet, trying to make herself disappear from her abuser's sight. But the swollen belly wouldn't allow it. She was trapped, and she knew she was trapped. Riley moved beside me, her voice breaking. "Oh God, she's seizing. This is preterm labor." Jordan's fists clenched. "This is bad. Really bad." Before I could speak, Ryan Mercer stumbled out from behind the pallet, wooden stick in hand, eyes clouded red, alcohol leaking from every breath. "If she whines again, I swear I'll—" He lifted the stick. But when he saw us, his face twisted drunken rage tangled with confusion. I stepped directly between him and Ember. "Ryan Mercer, step back, put the stick down." Ryan snarled. "She's my dog." Cole raised his badge. "Not anymore." Behind me, Riley whispered, "Hannah, she's about to collapse." Jordan added, "Her belly's bleeding." But my stare never left Ryan. "Put the stick down, or you'll be on the ground before you can blink." Ryan smirked. "Try me." He lifted the stick. Cole hit him first. Jordan followed. The stick hit the dirt with a final damning thud. Riley dropped to her knees beside Ember. "Ember, can you hear me?" The dog opened her eyes, just a faint slit. And for the first time in months of beatings, she saw a human face that meant safety. I knelt beside them. That was the moment everything shifted. The moment a rescue call turned into a race against death itself. The moment I understood, if we didn't act now, there would soon be nothing left to save. The moment Ryan Mercer was pinned to the ground, the entire backyard of Maple Hollow Road fell silent. So silent it felt like someone had cut the sound out of the world. The only things left were Ember's ragged breaths, fast, shallow, broken like an old machine on the verge of burning out, and the pounding of my own heart slamming wildly inside my chest. Riley gripped the medical bag so tightly her knuckles turned white. "She's going into shock. We don't have much time." A drop of blood fell from Ember's swollen belly, thick, fresh, a deep red that meant danger. I knelt beside her, cupping her head in my hands. My hands shook with every fading breath that left her body. "Stay with me, sweet girl. You don't get to give up, not today." Ember shivered, one last reflex, like her body was clinging to life while her spirit was already exhausted beyond reason. Jordan dropped to the ground beside Riley. "Quick assessment now." Riley pressed her hands to Ember's belly and her face drained of color. "She's contracting. But this isn't normal labor. This is preterm. Extremely dangerous." A few feet away, Cole held Mercer down, his knee braced between the man's shoulder blades. Mercer thrashed, screaming like a lunatic. "That's my dog, let her die. Don't touch her." His voice made Ember tremble violently. I whipped around, my voice colder than steel. "Cole, get him in the car, as far away as possible." 10 seconds later, his screams were swallowed by the slamming patrol door. Silence fell again, heavy, suffocating. And Ember opened her eyes at me. It wasn't a plea anymore. It was surrender, her body ready to let go, her heart barely holding on. In her eyes was a question I will never forget. "Are you really different from them?" I leaned close, my voice soft but commanding, like a lifeline thrown across a cliff. "Ember, you have to stay, for the baby's inside you." Riley clenched her jaw. "We have to move now. 5 more minutes on the ground. We lose Mom and Pups." Jordan snapped open the portable stretcher. I supported Ember's back legs. Riley held her belly steady, and Cole helped lift her into the rescue van. Ember couldn't help herself, her head dropped limp to the side, so lifeless it made something inside me twist painfully. Riley checked her gums. They were white as paper, severe oxygen loss. Could be internal bleeding. Jordan jumped into the driver's seat. "Hold on to her, I'm running every red light." The van hit potholes, jolting Ember's body. She let out a hoarse, shattered cry. More blood seeped from her wound. Riley worked fast, hand shaking as the van rattled. Heart rate dropping. 80, 70. I pulled Ember's head against my chest. "Stay with me, baby girl. Your little ones still need you." Under the strobing siren light flashing across the van, Ember lifted her head a few millimeters, so slight it looked like an illusion, and nudged her nose into my palm. A tiny touch, but it was her last thread of will. Jordan shouted from the front, 1 minute, Riley forced the IV wide open. I'm pushing everything I can. A full-body convulsion shook the stretcher. No, no, don't let go, I almost screamed. Riley checked her chest voice cracking. 60, 50, she's crashing. The van screeched to a stop in front of Blue Ridge Emergency Vet Hospital. Medical staff rushed out, white lights flooding the scene. We've got her major internal trauma move, bring her inside. I held Ember's paw until the ER doors swung shut, and in that instant Ember went completely limp. No cry, no eye movement, just a battered, broken body being pulled into the last place left with hope. I stood frozen, Ember's blood drying on my hands, my heart squeezed tight as if someone had wrapped a fist around it. Jordan placed a hand on my shoulder. We got her here. The rest, that's up to a miracle now. But I knew the truth. Ember and the 4 lives inside her had just stepped into the fiercest battle they would ever face. The hallway in Blue Ridge Hospital was always colder than it needed to be, the kind of cold that makes every sound echo farther and every piece of bad news feel heavier. Jordan, Riley, and I sat on the stiff blue plastic chairs, the smell of antiseptic clinging to our clothes. No one spoke. Time stretched, warped every minute as long as an afternoon. The surgery room doors stayed shut, the red surgery in progress. Light blinking steadily like a reminder that we were completely powerless. Riley had her arms wrapped tightly around herself, trying to keep her hands from shaking. We got her here in time, right? I didn't answer. I looked down at my own hands, still stained with the dry brown streaks of Ember's blood and the blood of the tiny lives inside her. We brought her here. I whispered, my voice tight and thin. That's more than she ever had before. But there was no certainty in my eyes. Only a quiet fear is eating its way through me. When the door finally swung open, Dr. Mateo Collins stepped out. Face, drawn gloves streaked with red. She's alive, he said, and that's the only thing I can confirm right now. Riley shot to her feet. I held my breath. Collins continued. Ember's lost a massive amount of blood. She's showing early signs of sepsis. 2 ribs are broken. We're trying to stabilize her internal organs. The puppies are still moving, but not stable. I asked the question all of us feared. Is she going to make it? Collins looked at me, weighing every syllable. I don't know, but she's fighting. He led us to the ICU viewing window. Ember lay there like a leaf battered empty by a storm, fragile enough to crumble at a touch. Her ribs stood out like shadows for lines running from both legs. The monitor blinked with a heartbeat so weak it looked ready to vanish. But when I stepped closer, Ember opened her eyes. Just a sliver, just a thread of awareness. But she found me, instantly held on to me like gripping the edge of a cliff. Her eyes said one thing. You're still here. I placed my hand on the glass. Yes, I'm here. I'm not going anywhere. Collins watched quietly. She responds to you. That's her first connection. But Ember's heart rate dipped lower. 60, 58, 55. She's exhausted. Collins murmured. But she's still holding on for her pups. The next morning, I returned before sunrise. I brought the brown blanket from our rescue van, the one that still carried her scent and mine, the scent of the moment she was saved. A nurse placed the blanket gently inside her ICU kennel. At first, Ember didn't move. Then her ear twitched. Her head lifted an inch. And with the last scraps of strength she had left, she shifted toward the blanket, pressing her nose into it like it was the only familiar breath in the world. Jordan whispered beside me, afraid to disturb the moment. She remembers you. It wasn't the simple kind of remembering. It was a survival instinct, the recognition of the first human who ever made her life hurt less. Ember breathed deeper, not from pain, but from relief. For the first time since the beatings, the chain, the heat, the nights alone in the dirt of Tennessee, Ember felt safe. I pressed my hand to the glass. We're nowhere near done, but I'm not going anywhere. You hear me? That night, with only the ICU monitor beeping steadily, Ember lifted her head again and rested it on that same blanket as if saying, "Please don't go." And I whispered back firm enough that volume didn't matter, I'm staying, one step at a time. In that moment, Ember was no longer a victim. She was a mother fighting to the very edge of life for the babies who had never seen the Tennessee sun. And I knew one thing for certain. Her healing had only just begun. For creatures who've lived in hell, the road back is never smooth. But Ember, she had chosen to live. The quiet inside Blue Ridge ICU felt like a thin sheet of ice covering a winter lake calm on the surface, but one small ripple could shatter everything underneath. Ember had given us a few days of fragile progress. Her eyes opened more fully. She recognized my voice, her breathing steadied. But for animals who've lived through trauma as deep as hers, hope is always delicate. The body has limits, and when those limits reach their breaking point, the collapse comes like a blade out of nowhere. Ember's breaking point arrived exactly like that. The monitor suddenly released a long, piercing alarm, cold enough to slice down Hannah's spine. I jolted upright, as if pulled out of a nightmare. Riley rushed to Ember's side. Jordan shouted for the doctor, his voice cracking with fear. Ember curled inward, her body shaking hard, violent tremors ripping through her. Her breath flickered like a bulb about to burn out. Her eyes were open wide but empty, recognizing no one, no light, no warmth. Sepsis had come back fiercer than before, as if it wanted to drag Ember over the edge once and for all. Dr. Collins burst in with the speed of someone far too familiar with life-or-death moments, issuing orders rapid fire. Nurses moved around Ember like a contained storm, but Ember didn't respond. Her body jerked in harsh spasms as if something was tearing her out of this world. The heart monitor plunged in a straight line downward, announcing the thing we all feared. She was giving up. She doesn't have anything left. Riley choked. Jordan whispered, half prayer, half plea, "Don't go, Ember. Don't leave us." I stood frozen at the ICU doorway. I saw something in Ember's eyes I had seen before, the extinguished look of an animal beaten, caged, pushed to believe it didn't deserve to exist. The look she wore in that backyard on Maple Hollow, where every cry she ever made had fallen into silence. I placed my hand on the door handle. I'm going in with her. A nurse tried to stop me, but Dr. Collins studied my face for a long second, then nodded. I stepped into the cold, sterile room, the overhead lights bleaching Ember's fragile body until she looked like she might disappear into the very bed she lay on. I knelt beside her and placed my hand on her head gently, as if touching the closing page of a life. "Ember," I whispered, my voice trembling but firm. "You're not there anymore. No sticks, no screaming, no pain. You're allowed to stay. You're allowed to live." I reached into my rescue jacket and pulled out the rusty piece of chain, the one I found beside her on the first day. I set it on her blanket. "This is your past," I said softly. "But it doesn't hold you anymore. You broke it. Now you choose your own path." The ICU fell silent. No one dared to breathe. And then Ember moved, just a tiny shift weaker than a breeze, but she leaned forward and touched her nose to the broken piece of chain. A small choice, but the choice of a survivor. Riley broke into tears. Jordan turned his face away. Cole, standing outside the glass, clenched his fists like he was praying. Dr. Collins whispered, barely audible, almost to himself, "She's choosing to live." Immediately, the monitor changed rhythm. Blood pressure inched upward. Her breathing deepened. Each number crawled its way back up from the cliff's edge. I lowered my forehead to hers, tears falling onto her thin, patchy fur. That's it. Stay with us. Not a miracle, not magic, just a living being hurt for far too long deciding she deserved one more day. And sometimes that's all it takes to begin an entirely new life. After that final septic shock, Ember fell into a sleep so deep it looked like she would never return. But I knew better it wasn't the sleep of surrender. It was the last mercy that fate grants a body, wrung dry by pain and fear for far too long. I sat beside her, watching each weak but steady breath, and I felt viscerally that I was witnessing a soul step back from the edge of death and begin searching for the road home. In the days that followed, hope returned slowly but truly. The monitor no longer screamed every hour. Her blood work crept upward, inch by fragile inch. And every morning, Ember opened her eyes a little wider like her body was cautiously testing whether the world outside was still safe. The doctors said they had never seen a recovery so fueled by will alone. But I knew the truth. Ember had found a reason to stay alive. And that reason lay behind one thin wall in the neonate room. 4 tiny Doberman pups, each no bigger than a fist, eyes still closed. Breathing in soft, helpless squeaks were moved closer to the ICU. And for the first time, Ember reacted with certainty. Her ears twitched. Her breath quickened. Her eyes struggled to open. Not from fear, not from pain, but because she sensed the presence of what mattered most. I asked the doctor to let Ember touch one of the pups even for a moment. A nurse placed the smallest one, Ash, into my hands. Ember turned her head slowly, painfully, but without hesitation. She brought her nose forward, touched Ash's tiny body, and then licked the top of his head once, just once, like a silent vow that she was still a mother no matter how hard the world had tried to take that from her. The moment she did, the monitor changed. The rhythm steadied, strengthened, as if Ember's heart had just rediscovered its purpose. A week later, when the pups were strong enough to be with her, I witnessed a sight I knew I would carry for the rest of my life. Ember lying in a warm room, her 4 babies pressed against her belly, rooting for milk with the smallest cries imaginable. No one hit her when she shifted. No one shouted. No one yanked a chain. Only daylight. Only the smell of new milk. Only the soft breaths of the lives she had nearly died to protect. Word of Ember spread through Rockford Ridge like wildfire. People brought blankets, food, and donations. A retired veteran delivered a handmade collar. For a real warrior, he said. I read letters to Ember. Every time she heard the words, "People love you," her tail gave a tiny, hesitant wag. When she was finally strong enough to leave the hospital, Ember was taken to a special foster home, a quiet farm where animals who had survived cruelty could start life over. There, beneath sunlight no longer as brutal as the day she'd been abandoned, Ember took her first steps without trembling, without flinching, without searching for an escape route. Her 4 pups toddled around her feet, and Ember, for the very first time, formed a small curve with her mouth. A smile. I stood watching from a distance, and in that moment I understood Ember still carried the memories. But the memories were no longer chains. They were scars, proof of a survivor. And that reminded me of something we too often forget. Even a voiceless being can love, can trust, can choose the human who saved her. Ember didn't just survive. She became living proof that compassion, even a small act of it, can break a lifetime of cruelty. And sometimes one person chooses not to look away. It is enough for a soul to choose life one more day.